our fifth episode of Everything K. Woo. Today we're having Jeff Benjamin and Tamar Herman join us for our interview of K Journals. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Let's start with Tamar.
Hi, thanks you guys so much for having us tonight. I'm Tamar Herman.
Our fifth episode of Everything K. Today we're having Jeff Benjamin and Tamar Herman join us for our interview of K Journals. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Let's start with Tamar.
I'm hearing like an audio. Thank you guys so much for having us tonight.
Hearing flag as well.
Herman.
Our fifth episode of Everything K. Today we're having Jeff Benjamin and Tamar Herman join us for our interview of K Journals. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Let's start with Tamar.
I'm hearing like an audio. Thank you guys so much for having us tonight.
Hearing flag as well.
Herman.
Our fifth episode of Everything K. Are we good? Okay. Hello again. Tamar, would you like to introduce yourself with the double introduction?
Yeah, sure. Of course, it's Zoom. It's just how we roll. Hi. I'm Tamar Herman. I'm a culture writer who specifically covers K-pop and international music. I write for Billboard and Forbes and have written for a lot of other outlets. I have an upcoming book about BTS right here called BTS Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and it's out on August 11th. And thank you guys again so much for having me tonight.
And hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Benjamin. I am a journalist here in New York. I've been Billboard's K-pop columnist since 2013 and writing about this subject for places like Rolling Stone, New York Times, Forbes, and beyond. And yeah, I've been able to do lots of cool stuff in this world, and whether that's been television or writing or what have you, it's been a really fun journey. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here and talk to you guys. So thanks also for having me.
Nice. Thank you, guys. So we'll start with the most basic of basic questions. How did you become a journalist?
Yeah.
Either one is open question.
I spoke first last time, so Jeff.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I originally went to school for music business and really struggled quite a bit in music business. And I know Berkeley has a great music business program too, I believe. Quite quickly realized that the business side was not something I was good at. My grades definitely suffered. And it was only when actually I did start looking more into the journalism world and the writing world that my grades got better and I was way more passionate, way more inspired than I ever was. So it was thanks to this internship I did at Billboard at the time that really got my feet in. I had a blog that was terrible that's been erased from the internet, thankfully, that you can't find even if you try. But it was starting in that way, and then, using what I learned there to then get an internship at Billboard and just try to grow my writing, my portfolio, my network into an actual something that I could support myself with.
I thought I didn't really know what I was doing with my life. I'm Jewish from New York, so people thought I was going to be a lawyer, and that's what my family always told me to be, but I hated that idea. And I went to Macaulay Honors College. It's the CUNY honors program, and there's a study abroad option, and I was already a fan of K-pop, and I was like, I'm gonna, I don't really need to study anything particular to go to law school because nothing matters except the LSATs. So I'm going to actually study what I'm interested in. And I essentially created my own degree. It was technically East Asian studies, but it was really kind of like, let's learn about, an entire continent that we don't really talk about a lot in American schools and see so much representation of in American media. So I ended up studying that, and I was able to, because of the program, there was a grant to study abroad. So I went to Korea for 6 months. And while I was there, I started blogging. And once I came back, I got an internship from actually like my business minor. It was totally unrelated to anything else, at NBC. I still was saying, oh, I'm still going to law school here, but I was working at NBC for 6 months as a assignment desk intern, and then I got offered a job there as a production assistant working on the overnight news show. So while I was there, I was still blogging for like a few little K-pop sites, trying to, okay, if I write like about my music, maybe someone will like what I have to say, and maybe I'll get to cover some shows. Not realizing that I was also getting really good experience on the job at NBC about news coverage and storytelling, and actually learning the job of news. If you want to go into journalism, I say that it's probably better to go pursue it first and then go to grad school for journalism if you haven't already got an undergrad degree, because most people in the newsroom at the time told me that that was the way to do things. Learning on the job for journalism is kind of how you go about things. So sorry, tangent. But yeah, so while I was at NBC, I was still writing, and after my contract ended, because it was 1 year PA position, I kept at it, and I started writing for Billboard. I ended up staying at Billboard. I'm now a pop correspondent for Billboard, and I've written for a lot of other places. I was in Vox's Explained on Netflix in the K-pop episode, which was a really fun experience. So I kind of, K-pop was something I was really interested in high school and college, and it kind of intersected with, I'm a curious person, and it turns out curious people make the best journalists. So kind of everything went together, and I'm really happy that I went to NBC for a while. I learned a lot about how many people die in Newark, New Jersey every weekend. It's fewer than I thought, but I also learned and met a lot of really great people there, and kind of that's how my career path led me to K-pop and how I became a journalist, because I kind of fell into it.
Nice. That's a really interesting story. You kind of answered the next question. So Jeff, I think this one goes to you as well. How did your career specifically lead you to K-pop?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think it was never actually about K-pop, and this is something that I always try to tell people if they're interested in writing about K-pop. First and foremost, it ultimately has nothing to do with K-pop. It's getting your skills down, knowing how to write, knowing how to file stories, knowing how to cover different news beats, whatever it might be. But with me, I was the weird intern at the time who just wanted to write about the things that he was really passionate about, whether that was a UK girl group or an Arab pop singer, or this K-pop thing that I was such a fan of. And I had been a fan of it about 2 or 3 years at the time. And it just, I believed in it. I was a fan of the music first and foremost, but I believed in it. And there were a lot of really good opportunities at the time. I was an intern in 2011, 2012. This is when Billboard Korea started. They launched a K-pop chart. Of course, everyone remembers 2012, the summer of Gangnam Style and Psy. There was a lot of really good timing and things like that. And, when I had graduated in 2012, that summer of 2012, that was the first K-Con festival, if you guys remember that. It was just a lot of really good timing. And, I in addition to launching that column in 2013, I actually just was a regular writer, editor at Fuse TV, which covered all kinds of music. So I was always kind of balancing these worlds of just, all the kinds of different music I liked. And K-pop just presented a lot of amazing opportunities. It kept growing. I stuck with it. There's, Tamar can totally speak to this too. We've seen a lot of writers come and go, and people who have been in this business that didn't really stick around. But, I think it's been worth it to stick around. And and yeah, we're at this kind of really cool space now where, you know, we're talking to you guys here at Berkeley, or, you know, the amazing things that groups like BTS are doing where they're having books written about them. It is really, really cool. And I think it was just a lot of good timing. But also it just, you know, I was a fan first and foremost. It had as much to do with K-pop as it didn't have to do with K-pop.
See, I watched one of your interviews actually when you went into the same thing, and it reminded me when you were talking about when Gangnam Style came out, one of your editors had apparently told you that to stop trying to make K-pop happen, it wasn't gonna happen. And then it came out with Gangnam Style, and then you were like, ha.
I literally, that was that 2011, 2012 era, you know. I mean, that editor, love her. She works at Pitchfork now. She was never, you know, going to be the biggest K-pop fan, but you know, I believed there were a lot of things to make me believe. So here we go.
Nice. How has writing about K-pop personally influenced your own journalism and your studies with like different artists and music coming out now?
So I mean, I said before, like I kind of ended up pursuing what I ended up studying in school, not just because of K-pop, but K-pop was kind of a good lens to do it with. I went to Queens College. At the time, they didn't have a Korean program. By the time they left, it was a sizable department with several professors. So it's kind of like when, you know, all those government funded research studies in Korea that a lot of people in the US are now studying Korean. It held up true at my college. But for journalism, so because I kind of started out journalism, I like my K-pop stuff or my cultural stuff at the time, I thought it was just like, oh, you know, just blogging and I'm going to go into hard news. Like I was really like waking up at 1 a.m. every morning and making, you know, the 3 a.m. TV shows for NBC's New York, which is a huge sizable audience. And I saw some really amazing stories and worked with some really amazing journalists. But at the same time, I was also working with a lot of really amazing journalists. Jeff mentioned that, you know, a lot of people kind of don't stay in the field. And somebody who actually just came up the other day and I mentioned on Twitter was Adrienne Stanley, who was one of the first female writers to really cover K-pop. And she was writing for like places like K-pop Stars and MTV Iggy. And she really introduced a lot of us to the field. And at the time, like I realized how important it is not only to, you know, carve out a place for yourself in the industry, but also raise up others in the industry. So I have a blog that I co-founded with a few friends called Cult Scene, and we just created a fund and now are starting to pay writers who want to write about K-pop and don't really have any portfolio or want to get out there. So I think one of the great things about K-pop, like aside from the fact that, you know, it kind of became an entry for me to explore, you know, I really do think like it opened up my vision to a lot of the world in a way that like I probably wouldn't have been able to write about, because now I can write about K-pop. And also recently I spoke to a Filipino group called SB19, and my editors maybe 4 years ago would be just like, who cares about K-pop, let alone, you know, a Filipino boy group. And so it's kind of been able to open up a lot of doors, and I've been able to cover a lot of really great stories that I don't know if anybody is a fan of Nicki. She just came out with a new song today. I really like her. She's on Radiate Rising. Check her out. She's great. But yeah, so like I just feel like K-pop kind of, you know, when we talk about K-pop, it's not, you know, it's not a one, it's not like one thing, it's not one genre. And I kind of take that to my approach. Like I'm not just writing about K-pop, I'm really telling the stories of these people. So for me to be telling those stories also needs to, you know, tell stories that maybe other people aren't telling, and create opportunities for people who can tell stories better than me. So, you know, like I always say, like on social media, like my DMs are always open for new writers. I mean, they were just open in general, but I will definitely respond to new writers. I won't respond to someone who's just like, hi, I don't know what you want from me. But yeah, like new writers are my favorite thing. Like Jeff gave me some early career opportunities. Like I think, like, I don't know, it influenced me a lot. I like to think I'm a better person because K-pop, like the communal aspects and music aspects and everything's just, I don't know, it makes things good. Sometimes it makes things bad, but usually it makes things good.
Yeah, that's great. Normally when people are getting into K-pop, they, especially if they're not necessarily in the immediate media. Like if they can't just like turn on their TV and see it there, they go to journalists first, you know, because you guys have the new info. Like you guys know who just came out, like if they're good or not, and you know what shows they're going to be on. So how do you guys feel about the fact that you're the head of this giant like Hallyu wave? Like you guys, you're the first people, you're the people we first go to when we're looking for this stuff. So what's how do you feel about that? Like, is that pressuring or what's it like?
You know, it's kind of funny. I never actually thought about it until you put it up in those terms, because I feel quite lucky and quite blessed, you know, that yeah, this white Jewish boy from Chicago, you know, can hopefully, you know, be a connecting point and a bridge to just, you know, very different cultures, very different worlds. And I think it's amazing. It's an amazing privileged position to be in. I feel really lucky. And, you know, I take it really seriously as well. You know, I always try to, you know, when those kind of opportunities might come up, or, you know, even if it's kind of, you know, those different industries bridging that world, you know, always trying to show it in a way that doesn't other someone else. You know, I think we've all been able to feel like outcasts, or that we don't belong, or that we feel like the other, you know, trying to show that, you know, it's just, we're all humans, you know, not to be corny or whatever, but, you know, it's all similar and it's all accessible, and there's so many aspects that make it so unique and so special in its own way, but there are so many ways that connect us and make it you know, accessible and connect you to, you know, just this music and this art and this industry, that I take it really seriously, and it's something I really want to do, especially on like a larger industry basis, you know, just giving it that equal respect that it deserves, not having people say, stop trying to make, you know, why can't K-pop happen? Why do you have to tell me K-pop's not going to happen? Or, you know, I've watched interesting conversations happen with people in power who just kind of, you know, want to change things, or don't see the value in how it is already. And, you know, I take a big pride in trying to hopefully get everyone on a similar level, and, you know, make it accessible for everyone. It wasn't, you know, these early interviews we're talking about and things like that, you know, it was a lot of education on both sides, trying to understand, okay, you know, this is how media works in the US, but also this is how they work in Korea, and trying to find, you know, a common ground in that way too.
Yeah. Speaking of common ground and like figuring out the difference between like the two places where this takes place, have you noticed any differences in your like ethical opinion changing, like working with these two like powerhouses in like music and media? Like how have your views changed when working with both?
I don't know if they've changed because like working with US and like Korea, or just Asia in general, but I think just in general, like we are working with different cultures. You know, like anybody who's taken a business like 101 class in college is like learn about different business cultures, and it's really funny because you really can't. You know, there are some things that you learn that like you can be flexible with. There are some things you learn that like, okay, well, that's just how we do it here. Like it's literally against like ethics in journalism here. Like one big thing that people always talk about K-pop is in Korea, people always ask for questions before an interview, and in the US, that's really uncommon. It's increasingly common in the US for entertainment journalism, and it's kind of like as kind of social media and influencer culture changes what it means to be even doing interviews. So we're kind of like seeing that happen more in the US. So kind of like now when something like that happens in Korea, like some editors will be really flexible and some will be like, no, we just don't do that. So, I mean, I have my ways of working around these things. I have people in the industry. One of the best compliments I've ever gotten was a PR rep told me that I'm a difficult person to have an interview with because they always have to like warn the people, like, she's going to give us like 3 questions in our email and she's going to ask you like 100 questions. So like, just be calm. And I was like, that's like what we're doing here. Cause it's not PR. If you want to have like a totally PR'd interview, then, run your own outlet. I think, obviously we're not trying to like catch anyone doing anything. Like we're not like my favorite interview. Oh, I don't know if I should say it's actually his birthday today. Happy birthday, Wonu from 17. Last year I did an interview for Forbes and like I was asking about the disconnect between K-pop stars' personal life and like their public persona. And because K-pop stars definitely have like an aura to them, and it must, and like I figured, okay, it must be difficult. And I listened to the audio like 6 times to see if something got lost in translation. And I'm friends with the person who was translating, and like I speak Korean, and like it was totally fine. Like I'm not fluent in Korean, so I don't do my own interviews. I always have a translator, but like I was listening and she was translating just fine, and their answers were all fine. But like they took it to the next level and they responded, and Wonu responded that they never do anything illegal, and mentioned how he always will throw things out in the trash. And it is my favorite like experience, because it was just like I think in Korea, it's such like scandals of like stars is such a big thing in a Korean career. But for like me, I was just talking about like, in America, like we are really aware of, celebrities are celebrities and they also have personal lives. And so I was just like inquiring. And so things like that, like obviously there's definitely like a lot of cultural disconnect, and sometimes it's really tough. Like I've walked away from interviews before when an artist like is refusing point blank to go towards any like even pretending to be journalism, and I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that. Like you just really want PR. That's uncommon. Usually people are like willing to find a middle ground, so it's good to be flexible, but you also have to be doing what you're doing. Like journalism is journalism for a reason. But yeah, that interview is my favorite thing ever.
Yeah, and I would just add to, hopefully you're not compromising your ethics. Like, oh my gosh, like I see things, and I recognize and empathetic to the fact that they are 2 different countries, but obviously we represent a collaboration between the 2, and if you are changing, quite literally, the definition of what your journalism is or what it represents, that's that's a step too far. And I think I don't think anything should make you ever like question your ethics, especially as a person, period, but as a journalist as well. So yeah, that's something that sometimes it's gonna sometimes make an awkward situation, and that's sort of life. And again, we don't work for them. We're not getting paid by these artists, like the people that matter. And same goes for like fan reactions too. I think a lot of people, especially with just how fan-centric and intense K-pop can be with the fandom, wanting to cater more towards, oh, I had such a great time with this group, but it's sometimes it's less, you are writing for the people that are paying you, and hopefully your ethics are never getting compromised in that way.
Yeah, I've been seeing increasingly like fans, every time an interview goes a certain way or doesn't go a certain way, they have assumptions. So like one thing I've recently seen is like if an artist doesn't say the right, like something that fans expect the artist to say, they'll be like, oh, that must be, you're just making up quotes. And it's just like, but that's not how journalism works. Like that's not our, like literally that is against the definition of our job. And if someone is doing that, they deserve to be fired on the spot. And so it's very like kind of hilarious to see how the fan narrative of what journalism is in regards to K-pop in America. And like there are so many issues with journalism and K-pop in the West, like dark side of K-pop stories. We definitely need 10 more next week. But just like the way that fans perceive journalism and the way that artists perceive journalism is always, in the age of social media, things are changing a lot because, now you can just pull up your phone and go live. And why do you need a journalist? But I think it's really kind of fascinating to see how, the perceptions of what journalism is kind of even shaping the narrative of K-pop writing in the US. So like, or in the West in general. And I've had a good few laughs seeing fans like totally misunderstand just like how things happen. And it's really cute. Like, I'm glad you're not in our field.
Yeah. That's understandable. What is your personal process of putting together a story? Because I know a lot of people have different processes of doing things. Like even in music, like we have a different process of like writing the story first, or how getting the feel of what we want the story to be. So what is your personal process of putting together what you eventually put on paper?
I think especially in these past couple months and what 2020 has given us in terms of, you know, new life situations and new world orders, it's changing. You know, I don't know if I necessarily have an actual set process per se. You know, sometimes a request can come from the Korean labels. Sometimes if they have US representation, it will come to that. I'm very lucky that people think of me, and I'm really thankful for that. But then sometimes, you know, it's my own, like, oh my gosh, like I love this story that this artist is telling. I love this album, whatever it might be. I want to help tell your story, or I want to have the opportunity to tell your story. So it goes both ways, I think. But, you know, then wanting to, you know, whatever kind of, however a story comes about, I think no matter what happens, my main thing, and this is something I learned like really, really early on, even in my writing, was that, you know, I'm never, especially here in America, as an American, I'm never gonna beat the Korean outlets, or these, you know, 24-hour media outlets that are dedicated strictly to K-pop. But what I can do, hopefully, is offer something unique and something that maybe they're not getting from the 24-hour guys and from the people that are living and breathing this, you know, in that world and in that job-wise way, that I can hopefully, you know, give you something that is accessible, that is remarkable, that, you know, makes you think. And even just this week, you know, I was really, really stressed out about this this interview with the Stray Kids. I talked to Stray Kids for their new album, and I was just, you know, I just didn't know what I wanted to. I knew what I wanted to say, but I just was really struggling in how to say it, and I didn't just want to, you know, throw out fluff. They were probably a little annoyed that it took me, you know, an extra 12 days or something to get it out. But I, you know, quite literally it all came to me. I was meditating quite literally, and my, you know, sentences, it all started coming together. But I think, you know, it's just always kind of going back to, what do you want to say? What do you want to write? You know, not that it's necessarily about me, but it's also about, you know, what can my unique little mind say and you know, structure-wise, to help these people tell their story in a way maybe that it hasn't been told yet. So that's something I always just keep in mind and always want to do and always aim to do. Yeah, from the get-go.
Tamar, would you also want to answer?
Sure. I actually tweeted the other day that like the process to writing a story and pitching a story is pretty much procrastination and anxiety until you actually realize it's due. And that I hate that, like, that's actually the truth, but that is my process through my entire life. Like whether it was high school or college, I always waited till the deadlines, or like I did it like 2 months before. I'm like, there is no in between. Nowadays, I tend to be up to the deadline. So usually I like sit on a story for a long time. I often go like on walks. I tend to like listen to a lot of new music when I'm on like a morning walk or something, because otherwise I won't like sit down and actually absorb. So usually while I'm doing that, I come up with like ideas of what I want to write. I have a whole pitch doc that I keep like all the stories I want to write. And some of them are like literally like 4 words of you should write about this. And some of them are like 6 paragraphs of an actual story that I've kind of thought up, and I don't know if I'm ever going to write it or ever going to publish it anywhere. So it really depends on the story. It really depends on like what I'm doing and what I'm telling, because you know, sometimes I'm just, you know, providing the little like intro, and then there's the Q&A, and the Q&A is where the real story is. Like my questions are shaping the story, and I think like that I put a lot more I'm not going to say a lot more effort into, but like when I'm writing something up that was like a Q&A, like the Q&A is the important part, not necessarily like meet this group that I interviewed, because I put a lot of thought into those questions, and I know they put a lot of thought into those answers. When it comes to like stories themselves, it really depends. You know, some stories are just, this is a brand new shiny artist, and some of them are really serious. Some of them, you know, are need tons of research and, you know, take weeks of time just researching. So it really depends on what's doing. At the end of the day, pretty much all my stories, regardless of if they are quick or if they're long, I'm writing them right before the deadline, whether that's like the day before it's published or like the week before it's published. It's just my MO. Like I'm doing a ton of other stuff, and then I realize, oh shoot, this is due and I have to write it. And like it may already be written in my head, but putting it down, I tend to do the best writing like under pressure, even if that's my own pressure. And I now like know exactly how long it takes me to write like 1,000 words, 2,000 words, which is not good. Have time to edit things. But I do take a lot of time to edit them. It's just, I have to kind of, sometimes I trick myself and I put in different deadlines into my phone, which is like super unnecessary. And I should probably talk to my therapist about that, but it works. It works for me. So like when I have a big piece, like I always say like, okay, it has to be done by this time. And if it's not, like, you are in trouble. What are you, like, I literally leave notes to myself, like, what are you doing tomorrow? So if that like gives you some insight into my brain and writing process, it's a lot of things. And then, oh, I should probably put these things into words. And that usually works out pretty well. I hope people think it works out pretty well. I think it works out pretty well.
Mm. I definitely relate to the procrastination bug. I think that is the worst thing, but also the best thing. How to figure out how many words you can write within 2 days.
It's so invigorating. Like I just like I really think like I am an adrenaline junkie. Like I love rock climbing, I love roller coasters. Like I think I kind of bring that into my writing too, which is just like not how most writers I think operate. Like I was watching a documentary about a writer the other day, and it was like she woke up at 5 a.m. to write every day, and I was like, oh, I can never do that every day the exact same time. That's not gonna work.
Yeah, I think it's even better when it's like your most procrastinated, and then it ends up being like your best writing in like a year.
That's the best. It's like when you're right at the line. I mean, not every story is like that, but sometimes like the best stories just like flow, and you're just like, oh, I wish that could always happen. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and sometimes you're just like, oh, more coffee.
Yeah, definitely get that. So what is the actual publication process for writers? Like after you write it and you have to send it in order for it to be published and like printed online, like what is that process for you guys?
Yeah, I think it varies from outlet to outlet. You know, sometimes I think it's, you know, I don't know if it's better or worse, but, you know, some editors are very hands-on, and they want to either go over things with you, or they will just make the edits for you, which can be problematic with K-pop, especially with people who may not know the nuances of certain things in the industry. I've definitely had to, you know, under a lot of nervousness, you know, be like, you kind of changed this thing that really doesn't make any sense. And, you know, I'm sorry to ask, but can you change this? And, you know, things like that. But usually, you know, sometimes, you know, you get into a nice flow with certain editors. They know your style. They know, you know, where you're where you might need help, where you might not need help. And sometimes it's as quick as, you know, we send things off, and then, you know, it's up within 15 half hour minutes. That didn't make 15 to 30 minutes. And, you know, there's also, I think, a lot of self-publishing going on these days too, you know, whether some outlets do embrace that, but also, it's something that I'm very curious about as well. Just, how to make use of all the content that you have and, wanting to put it out there. But usually it's, assignment from the editor, creating it, and then hopefully sending it in time by the deadline. But what our deadline is in this year of 2020 anyway, time doesn't exist. But, and then hopefully either getting feedback or hopefully seeing it published, within it could be 15 minutes, could be 5 days.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we actually have a question about this process. Well, one piece of this process. So excuse my pronunciation, but a question from Trivarshini is, how does Tamar Herman feel about using Google translations for writing an article in each podcast?
They're asking.
Is that what ethical journalism is?
They're asking because there was a situation where I Google translated like a phrase about something because it was something I'd never come up with in Korean ever. It was a very rare thing. It was after BTS, their shirt, the shirt issue like came up, and they issued this whole long document. And I had like a long call with Big Hit, and their team told me something, and then they sent me this long Korean thing and said the English one is coming, but like you can start like working on it. And I didn't know this phrase. It was about survivors. It was about survivors of the nuclear bombs. And so I Google translated this phrase, and it gave me this, and I thought that was in line with what the conversation was about. And so someone asked me, how did you get that wrong? And I said, well, I didn't know that phrase, so I Google translated. So it's become a big thing. You should know what you're talking about. That was an embarrassing thing. And my editor right away was like, don't do that ever again. We updated the article right away. Articles nowadays, unfortunately, don't get fact checking pretty much from like any but the biggest major outlets. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely better to know what you're talking about instead of just like hoping Google Translate is right. Papago is better. But typically like that was a very anachronistic thing. It was something that I thought I was confident in the translation of, and I wasn't. And I asked the PR rep after, like, how did it happen this way? And they were saying, oh, that's because of this, and the grammar is kind of weird. I was like, oh, thanks. That makes sense. I'm glad I learned something. But yeah, I wouldn't suggest it. I would suggest asking a translator. I had asked one of my friends who's a translator, and she was like, yeah, I probably would have thought that also, but like Google Translate is Google Translate. Don't rely on it. I also learned, fans are gonna hold that over your head forever, even if you've, updated an article. So I am sorry that happened, and I'm happy that we got that clarified right away and updated it pretty quickly. But yeah, don't Google Translate unless you really know that you're accurate in that. I'm happy that was like the only time that's ever happened. It's unfortunate that it was such a high profile thing and that people held it over my head for the rest of eternity. But like, I'm happy that people like talk about it, because you shouldn't be doing that. And just because I was like pretty confident, don't be that confident about translations, because even if it's something like I speak Hebrew fluently, and sometimes like I'll still find something and be like, oh, I totally missed the context of that. Like, translations are hard. Don't translate something that's complex about a complexity. Like, it's not a good look, whether you're a journalist or just like a person. So yes, I got a talking to from my editor about that. So that wasn't fun. And they were like, we trust you that you thought you were doing the right thing. Next time, just, text their PR person to make sure you have the right thing. So we update, articles get updated. It's not a goal. I hate seeing updates on my articles. It's like the worst thing, because you're just like, oh, I did something wrong, or someone else did something wrong. Because like sometimes a source will say something wrong, or, people will spell things wrong weirdly. I just saw a really weird update for someone's name was totally wrong. And I was just like, how did you speak to someone and not, get their name right? But that's a weird update. But it was like an article from 2016, and I thought that was kind of funny. The update was like 2 years later. I don't really know how that happened. But I think like owning up to your mistakes, like we're all learning on the job. Like, we're not all learning on the job. We're all learning as we, go in our life. And so like that was a big mistake in my career. I wish people would, understand that I recognized what was wrong. And I spoke to a lot of people about it to try to figure out, like, how did I get that point wrong? When I was pretty confident in it. And, you shouldn't be confident in things because everything can be proved wrong by everybody on the internet nowadays. But like, I'm really thankful that people ask that because, we should be, considering what we're doing. I don't typically translate my work. I've translated like a few things. I've only done like 1 or 2 interviews on my own, which is the scariest thing in the world because my Korean is pretty much shot unless I'm really drunk. I don't like conversing in other languages, even though I speak a few other ones. Like, it's just something I'm not confident in. I'm confident in reading. So, but like, always ask somebody else if you're not confident. Don't be overconfident when you have a work thing that you're going to put out into the world. It is embarrassing, and it's something that like is a learning experience, and I'm glad that I learned that.
Thank you for that. And also thank you for putting it out there that, like, if you make a mistake, like, do your part to grow from it and learn from it and like accept it and acknowledge it instead of just trying to like hide it. So thank you for that response, even through all of this. Yeah, we also have another question, more lighthearted. Luana Mello. I already work with K-pop. I have independent media and also interviewed some artists myself. I decided to start a journalism major to improve in it. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, as a journalism major, I mean, I definitely, use that time to your advantage. I thought it was very, I was totally the kid in school, and I don't know if my parents are watching, but I was definitely the kid in school who was quite like working on assignments while in class. Sorry. But I think I also learned so much from these professors, from these people who did teach me a lot, and got to indulge and try different things, and try so many different things as a writer at that time, whether it was profile writing, going on this, I don't like hard news. I don't like going on to a random, onto a street and talking about what I see. I remember we had to go, this was the time of, if you guys remember, what's it called? Occupy Wall Street. And and I remember I was like, I don't know anything about Occupy Wall Street. I don't know this world. I don't know these things, but what I do know is music. So actually I ended up writing about the music and the musicians and the sounds I was hearing at Occupy Wall Street. But just as much time as you can, use it to its advantage, embrace what these people are teaching you and what you're learning. And there's different aspects that you'll remember back when you do become a writer. So, the best thing I think I learned as a writer at journalism time was, what was that? Is something that I still use today. So, just embrace that time and hustle hard, work hard. It's amazing that you have those opportunities to write every day and write every week, but use it to your advantage.
Right. Thank you, Jeff. So Everything K, the webinar, started because of our lovely friend COVID-19. Mostly because we all unexpectedly got sent home early and the club had nothing really to do because all of our events were canceled, all of our concerts were canceled, everything school related was just shut down immediately, and we had no way to really stay in touch with each other. So we started this webinar to really continue with what we were doing and really trying to spread the awareness of K-pop and in Berkeley and in Boston through these shows. So like we had to change our plans. What has life been like for you guys with this new pandemic running around and like suddenly not being able to travel to meet people or going out of your way to attend events? Like what has it been like business as usual, like just like working from home, or has it been a completely different experience for you?
It's kind of been a little bit of both. Luckily, I guess in a way, or not luckily at all. Sorry, definitely luckily. K-pop is still moving forward, and luckily because a lot of our work tends to be like international. Like I'm used to doing video calls and I'm used to doing phone calls at weird hours and stuff. So like I think like a lot of people were adjusting to Zoom life. But because I mean, aside from the fact that like I work from home anyway, so I'm kind of used to working from home. But because I was already pretty comfortable doing interviews remotely, things haven't really changed all that much in the way that like I'm operating business. Obviously, interviews are done better when like they feel better when they're in person. You don't have lags. There's no like awkward like, can you see me? Can I see you? There's none of that, but it's kind of been pretty lucky because I think a lot of other entertainment writers out there kind of are like, there is no content coming out. Like, there's no new stuff. All the films are on hold and all the production of television shows are on hold. And obviously there's other stories, but like things have slowed down. Journalism industry in general has kind of been gutted in this time. So there's definitely like less work. Like a lot of friends have been asking, why aren't you doing news stories for K-pop anymore? And just like, I was told that Billboard's handling that internally for the time being. So like, if they don't cover, song's release, or they cover it late, or they don't cover this story, it's like, we can't really do anything about that when the powers that be in that outlet is saying, oh, sorry, we can't do that right now. We don't have the bandwidth. So things like that have kind of changed, but I'm still, working, still writing. It'd be nice to go to concerts again. We're not having KCON this year, and KCON always feels like summer camp for me. But yeah, so it'd be nice to get back to normal, but I'm like kind of okay with it, which sounds kind of like, I feel bad for everybody else who isn't used to this, but this is more or less my normal life, is sitting in front of my desk all day talking to people over camera in another country. So it's kind of okay. I feel really like lucky that I can say that.
And I think, just this time has been such a reminder of the importance, I feel very lucky that, rather than having, K-pop has afforded us so many great opportunities that, I've been able to diversify just the different ways I do get to work. So, I'm not going to act like, for me personally, I definitely struggled at the beginning, certainly not realizing how much, how much dependence I put on seeing people in person, or going to, the gym, or, even walking outside as much. It definitely hasn't been easy, but I'm actually quite thankful also for this time too, because I think I've learned a lot about how I can work better and diversify just my work, and try new things and push myself out there as well, rather than get complacent in just thinking, taking things for granted or whatever it might be. We can just kind of, try new things. And so I feel, certainly not happy the situation that the world is in, but I think it's been I've learned a lot about me personally, and just the way I work. So yeah, I think we're all there as well, though.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of figured like it wasn't like that much of a drastic difference, because journalism is mostly like in my understanding of it, it's like researching on your own through the internet and through books that you might like be able like to have at your disposal to read. So, but I think also like it must be hard to like Tamar said, hold interviews when you don't really have the person in front of you to like read their body language, or like being able to like make the room like easier and clearer for them, like to like settle their nerves or something like that. Like I think
I miss selfies. I miss, seeing people in person.
yeah,
It's I have an interview later today actually with a K-pop group, and I'm like, should we try like a Zoom selfie? Everyone like zoom in on the
yeah,
camera or something. It's just kind of, adapting and thinking a bit, how can we get creative in this time too? So I think that's been really cool too, and hopefully I'll personally have some cool things to share with you guys as well. Just
yeah,
'cause I'm getting bored here, I want to do more things. So yeah.
yeah. There's only so much you can do, but I think still being able to like have that aspect of your job must be really nice to still be able to reach out to people and to be able to meet new people and like have them share their experiences with you and still stay in contact. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, we're lucky.
Yeah. Um Another question. What is your most impactful experience as a journalist?
Um, I don't know if it's the most impactful for me as a journalist, but one that jumped out at me when I read the question was I got to do my first interview ever for Billboard with a K-pop group was GOT7 at their very first show in New York.
Mhm.
And then over the years, we've done a bunch of different interviews and like, we're not friends, but we have like a nice camaraderie because we've seen each other pretty much every single year for a few hours interviews. And the last time that we met up, like one of the members mentioned something to me like off the record, like about like how his perception of me had changed. And I just remember thinking, it's funny because like I'm a journalist, so I think like I'm the subject here. But like you're also like we're still people and we're just having conversations. And it was just such a nice thing to be able to think like, even though we're doing like the journalism thing and like I'm here really just to help you tell your story to the world in whatever way that is, and for me to like frame that in whatever way that I like think that it should be, and hopefully my editors and readers like that. But it's also just like at the end of the day, journalism is all about people and the world at large. And I just think like that was a really like I like walked out of that interview and I was just like, wow, it's been really cool that like my career has been able to kind of, contain this relationship and kind of like, and like I'm sure like he didn't think twice about this. Like I'm like 1,000, like they talk to like thousands of journalists each day.
Mhm.
But it just was really like impactful. Like at the end of the day, because as a journalist, you're writing, you're writing a lot, and words, you know, as lovely as they can be, they're not really tangible. Like I mean, as a book they are, but like they're not, a person. They're not someone that like once you put them down on a page, they have their life of their own. And I just remember thinking like it's been pretty cool that like the words that like I put on paper kind of reflect this larger experience of us as humans and just like my career, their career, and just like the human existence. And I don't know why, but I always think about that because I think like at the end of the day, like journalism is about telling stories. And so that was a pretty impactful experience. Just kind of like the reminder that like you're not only a story to me, I'm also a story to you. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Jeff, would you also like to share your impactful moment in journalism?
Uh, I mean, I think, similarly, I wasn't sure how to approach this question, but I think, similarly too, I think, it's amazing to have those experiences where someone can kind of recognize, ultimately we're discussing the art that they're putting out, but I do believe there is an art to writing and journalism. And it's cool when someone else can recognize that in yourself as well. And I've been so lucky to have those experiences or to have someone, recognize, we know what you do, or, I've seen your stuff or whatever it might be. And that's really quite amazing because it doesn't ever feel like it's supposed to be about you, it's supposed to be about them. So that's always quite cool. And I think also just, the idea that words can make a difference. I quite literally remember being so inspired to listen to the first K-pop album, group, whatever, that I was really, really interested in, was thanks to the words that the writer that I was reading, the way that they described it. And I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds like what I love. So I want to listen to that. And then when I've had readers like quite literally repeat certain sentences or certain headlines back to me. And that kind of reminds me, of the power of words and they can make an impact. And, I love magazines, I love books, I love paper. But, even if it's, not on a website too, can still make that same impact. And it's always kind of a nice reminder when you kind of hear or see things like that.
All right, guys, I have a few more questions for you, and then we're going to move on to our Q&A section where we get questions from the viewers. So if you want to go ahead and start entering your questions now, we'll take a look at that after these next few sections. So going from what you've both just said, with your interviews, at the end of the day, like when all is said and done, and when someone goes to your interview and they look back, what impression do you want them to have of you? Like, what do you want them to leave your interview feeling like?
Jeff?
Oh, okay. Is this the artist or the reader, or?
It can be anyone. Like, they're all consuming you as a person. Like, the reader is consuming like how you write, so they have that aspect of your person, and then the interviewer is coming and they're seeing you in person, but overall, like, you're interviewing them, but you're also, like you said, giving a part of yourself to them during that interview. So what impression would you like what lasting impression would you like to leave on others?
Yeah, I think the impression of just that, that they've been heard. There's, I kind of grapple with this idea, and I do believe in it, but I do think a lot of journalists and a lot of writers and a lot of media, it tends to be, and this is just, I think, inherent in the way we do write, it tends to be a lot of about, and especially in this age of social media, it tends to be a lot about the individual. And, sometimes I see long questions from writers, and then like the artist will give like 4 words as an answer. And I'm like, what was the point of that? You just did that to aggrandize yourself. And I think, in the end, I would like to hope that, no matter if it was the subject themselves or the reader, that they felt heard, that they felt seen, that they felt, that they were being, whether or not they were happy with how it came out, or happy with the ultimate subject or the way that I might have perceived things, at least I would hope that they felt heard, and that they felt like they had their voice amplified in media in that way. So I think that would be the main thing, is just hoping that they feel heard.
For me, I kind of usually go into interviews thinking like, what do I hope will make like the artists think more, and also people who are reading this interview think more. Like, if you're coming out of an article or an interview not thinking about the topic, then like, unless it's like a bland news piece, like I kind of feel like a failure to some degree. Like, I want to spur conversation. So, a lot of the times, like, I'll go into an interview and like I'll have some basic questions on my mind, but like the best thing you can do as an interviewer is like leave room for them to like, be silent a little bit longer, listen to them a little bit longer, give people, that extra second of, I came up with an idea, and then they pause, and like that's like the best feeling. And sometimes you don't get that, sometimes, like I sometimes rant to friends, it's frustrating because this is my job and this is my career, but it's also like this is part of their job. So if they're giving like that 4-word answer, whether it's, a 1-sentence question or like a 4-paragraph question, though I don't know why anyone does that. It's kind of like, how do you pull out the conversation from some people who are really happy to talk? Like, there are some times where you're just like, we don't have any time left. We have only limited time. And sometimes you kind of have to like push, like I'll go back to questions that I kind of, I think that maybe the artist has more to stay on, and like, they don't really like say it at first, because a lot of times when you're coming up with an idea at first, you have to formulate it. So I'll ask things in different ways. Like I've actually had like issues where I'll rephrase something, and then like the translator or the PR person will be like, "You already asked that," and I'm like, "No, I'm asking it again on purpose because I think there's more to this, and like I'd like other members of the group to share thoughts on this," which is me being really pushy. But like the whole goal of these conversations as an interviewer is to kind of help people, tell their story to the world. And if like it feels maybe they're giving you a really PR answer at first, I think it's kind of worth pushing in that case. And like, I'm pushy, that's fine. But I think, so many times, like some people, like you need, like the whole point of an interview is to spur conversation. You're having a dialogue and you're putting that dialogue out into the world. And I think that at the end of the day, like that's what, we don't need 100 cookie cutter interviews. You just need one really good interview that really makes like the world, I'm not gonna say like a better place or more beautiful, but kind of like enhances the world by putting that content into the world. You're sharing someone's story, because we're talking most of the time, Jeff and I are talking to musicians, and we're talking to people who like perform all the time and they speak to fans all the time. And so, one of my go-to questions lately has been like, what's one thing you never told your fans? And, I spoke to Stray Kids, and Bang Chan said that he watches Community and Big Bang Theory. And like, when I asked the question, they were like anything. I was like, literally anything, like just anything, because you say so much, but like, let's get like that one more thing. And who cares if it's just your favorite TV, but like, let's like get something out there into the world that, the rest of the interview was fine. But I always just think it's kind of like a fun, like not a conversation starter, because it's more of a conversation stopper, since it's usually my last question. But I just think it's like, we hear so much from artists nowadays. There's so much access, but it's our job to find another angle. So I'm always just thinking about like, what will people talk about? What will make fans think about this artist in a different way? And, sometimes like, it is just what TV shows you watch. Actually, that question also led to Stray Kids' Felix talking about how he's been baking a lot of brownies lately. And I was trying to give him a chocolate chip recipe. We didn't have time to give it to him. But just, we're all just telling stories of people in a different way than like they're doing it themselves, or other media outlets are doing it, or their company's doing it. And like, that's the beauty of journalism. So it's just about how can we tell this story, and how can we make people think about things in a different way. And so going into an interview, that's how I approach things.
Thank you. So our last two questions. One is, what do you think is the most overlooked part of your job that you wish people paid more attention to?
It's like in general, or
in general?
Transcribing. I complain about transcribing a lot. I hate it. I hate like having to regurgitate an interview that I just did. And I have literally been late on stories because I do not want to transcribe an interview. It is so painful to me, even if it's the best interview of all time. And sometimes I'll be transcribing and I'll like be laughing and I love it, and I'll be reminded of the moment, but I cannot. It is so painful on my part. So I think like that part from in between the interview to like it actually getting out there into the world, I guess like writing the whole article is also in that, but I find that enjoyable. But transcription is just like, oh, I really wish I had an intern at that time. Like it is the most frustrating thing in the world. And I really understand why there is so much more like video and audio content nowadays, because I think just some people were just like, we just don't want to do transcription anymore. We're just gonna put it on camera. Mm-hmm. But yeah, personally, I guess that's not like the most overlooked. That's just kind of something that I dislike. So I didn't answer your question. Sorry.
It's okay.
In terms of overlook, I think, it's not, I feel like there's a couple ways to approach it, but, it's certainly not the most lucrative thing, you know, that you can, you know, get into. I think there's a lot of worries with a lot of people just about, you know, in journalism in general. You know, I sometimes look back at, you know, talk to editors, you know, even at great outlets that I've been at, and, you know, have friends at, and, you know, wondering what their starting salaries were, and you know, being almost shocked at just how terrible it was, you know. And I've always felt really lucky just being able to navigate the way that I've been able to navigate, but also, you know, there's a lot of hustling that goes on. You know, I was, you know, in addition to having my, you know, 40-hour plus a week, you know, 10 to 6, when I started out, I was doing the column, trying to freelance elsewhere. There's a lot of, there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of hard work that goes on. It's not just that fun, you know, final interview that you see, you know, just like Tamar was saying, there's a lot of, I was about to say blood, sweat, and tears, but I'm not going to go there, about, you know, that transcribing, that, you know, not even just connecting with the interview. There's a lot of, you know, a lot of things that I feel like I'm my own artist booker lots of times too. And when I talk to people about assignments or collaborations, they say you're essentially your own artist booker as well, because we don't have the resources. We don't know these people. We don't have those contacts. That's on you to kind of not only set that up, you know, lots of times, lots of companies will have artist relations managers or people setting things up and assigning different things to be able to make it happen. But, you know, on us, there's a lot of independence, which is amazing, but also it's a lot of work. It's a lot of individual work. It's a lot of taking it upon yourself and being responsible and wanting to do it, you know, wanting to do it for the love of it. So, you know, I feel very lucky, of course, to be doing it, but, you know, that you got to be that self-starter. You got to be that independent person who can make it happen on their own. And you just got to do it. You know, it's, there's not a lot of time to just like feel bad for yourself or whatever it might be. You know, it's just about keeping it going and keeping it working and making it happen.
Yeah. Can I like just add to that? Like along with like the hustling, like this industry is terrible at paying people. And if you go on Twitter any day and like look at the media industry, what's going on recently, like this industry has a lot of issues with classism and racism and elitism. And like, it's really keeps people out of it. Like I only started it down this route because I got an internship through my public college that I had that like cost pennies in comparison to other schools. And even that, like I still needed help from my parents. And to get down this route, like to get a full-time job in this industry is almost impossible nowadays for freshmen straight out of college, for seniors straight out of college. It's really, really hard to break into the field. So many people have to do freelance after their day jobs. And like, you know, the people who I do know who are breaking into it are telling me like, things are even now worse than when it was when I started. Like I've never had a full-time job in this industry, in part because I like my independence and I like being a freelancer, but also because there just aren't so many opportunities nowadays, or, you know, the opportunities aren't worth it anymore. So I know a lot of people listening to this are probably like thinking about going into industry, and just be aware that this industry has a lot of issues. And I guess that's kind of the most overlooked part of my job. Journalism industry has a lot of issues, and you can go Google a lot more talks about that than this one.
Thank you, guys. The last question for tonight from me before we go on to our Q&A is around the fact that Everything K is centered to help students and people entering their careers, opening the space so that they can learn more about what the industry provides, to learn their options once they leave and once they start their journey into doing what they end up doing for however many years they end up doing it for. So we've had dancers here, we've had rappers here, we've done one show with just KPI. And at the end of every show, we always ask, what does K mean to you? And we've gotten a lot of different answers. We've got K that literally means Korean, for those who are proud of their heritage and want to like stick it that K means Korean because it's like it's a moment of pride for them. It's like, yeah, like we're here and we're strong. And then we've also had that K means media, K means dance, K means fun, K means passion. So we're here to ask you, what does K mean specifically to you?
I think it's to me it represents a world. It's and a world doesn't just run on music. It doesn't just run on media. It doesn't just run on food, what have you. There are so many aspects that make up a world, and something that I'm just so thankful for is the whole culture and just all the different experiences I've been able to have thanks to this via the K. I've been able to just learn little things about the world, or just the way humans interact with each other, or families interact with each other, or the way that my older senior friends will look after me as someone younger than them, or the way I can kind of bring that back to someone else. Just kind of learning all the different ways this world is connected, and realizing that just because you like K-pop, it doesn't mean that it ends with K-pop. There are so many more aspects that go into that, and you create this own little world and education in and of yourself. So I think K, it kind of it's almost like the letter to dive into this new world that you are experiencing, and I'm so thankful for it. It obviously stands for, I think at its core, Korea and Korean, but it that world itself is just so much more than I think anyone might even realize when you listen to one song, or when you check out a drama, or whatever it might be. There's a lot more that goes into that than just one letter.
Yeah, thank you. Tamar, what does K mean to you?
I think it means like I'm really a black and white thinker, so it's kind of like produced by or in Korea. So like things like K beauty or like K food, like these are things that, or K&D, K hip hop, like it's really kind of a regional like identifier, but it really means more than that. It's like that's just kind of like where like a certain element of it is happening, because K-pop as an idea happens everywhere across the world at this point, like everywhere in digital spaces. Korean food is enjoyed everywhere. Like the music isn't just happening in Korea. The entertainment isn't just happening in Korea. I recently saw a conversation about like, should Korea keep on like slapping the K onto things all the time? And I thought that was a really interesting conversation to be had, because like at what point do you still need to be identifying something like with the regional origins or the regional like source? And it's like definitely a conversation to be had. But I thought, like, for this conversation, like, what does it mean to be K? I really do think it's kind of just like, it is oriented around Korea. And because right now, like, that's really where it is all, that's what we're all talking about, like your events are all, that's what it all has to do with each other. That's what kind of connects us, like, I'm sure people watching, everyone who's talking on this call, like, I don't know if we would have encountered each other if not for all this that kind of got its start in Korea. So I think like when we're talking about like, what is the K, like that's kind of my idea.
Thank you. Those are very great interpretations for yourselves. Thank you for joining this interview, and thank you for being such awesome guests to have on our show, and like teaching us about your jobs and your lives, and giving us a bit more insight to what it's like to be a journalist for Korean media and Western media. And it's really interesting to hear your inputs. I think now we're going to turn it to the Q&A to see what the people watching have to say and what they want to learn from you. I think we have a question. Give me a moment, please. From Darling Spectrum, there seems to be a lack of Korean voices speaking on K-pop in the Western media spaces. Any thoughts on that?
American media is racist innately and is really classist and keeps people out of it because they don't pay young people and offer internship opportunities that hit up a lot of people. Um, Also, some people, like, I know, like, personally, I don't like writing about Jewish stuff because nobody needs to really hear about another Jew talking about Jewish stuff. Um, but I've heard from Korean reporters in the industry who are kind of already, they have their own beat. They're just not reporting on K-pop. They say, like, that's what they were told when they talked about K-pop, like, oh, it's just a Korean thing. So I think, like, the industry's elitism, the industry's, like, approach, like, like, the industry is racist. Why do you need two white people to be writing about K-pop for the biggest music magazine? Like, in general, like, not to, like, shit on Billboard or anything, but, like, the industry is super white. Like, it just is. Like, it's a huge problem. And we need to get diverse voices and we need to bring people up. And the industry is at fault here. Like, every person in the industry is a part of this problem. Like, we can't just, say suddenly, okay, I'm not going to write. They're not going to hire a Korean person. They're not going to hire someone who has a diverse voice that should be represented. The industry just sucks that way. Like, right now I'm seeing my timeline filled by a lot of people saying, oh, look, like, they said they're going to hire more Black voices. Oh, but they hired a white person to be the head of the HR team that's supposed to do that. Like, this is, like, a huge problem in America. Like, it's, we all have, like, a role to play to raise up more voices and, like, like, kind of try to change the state of media to make it a more diverse and representative place. And, like, we can do it little by little. Like, last year, Billboard, we kind of, like, a few the writers who have started at Billboard, like, either as interns or, like, long-term writers who have always done the Billboard annual K-pop list. We said, like, hey, can we bring on some more diverse voices, because nobody on your team knows anything about K-pop except for us, and we're just a bunch of white people and one Asian girl. And, like, why should it just be the four of us doing it every single year? Like, we need to bring on more voices. So we brought on two new writers that year, and, like, I heard before COVID they both had more writing opportunities from Billboard, but I haven't seen any of them come through, so I don't really know what's happening. But, like, I mean, like, we all are at fault here, to some degree. Like, we're all filling up a space, but I think, like, the industry, we've been, like, talking about this literally since, like, the start of, like, journalism, like, music journalism in this country, is, like, you need to represent more diverse voices. If you go back and look at any element of music industry, like, so much of it is just, like, all roots of it, almost essentially all roots go back to, Black culture in America. And, like, that has been pretty rarely acknowledged. Like, the music newsrooms are pretty not what I mean, they're still just white. There's little specks of diversity, but it's, like, it's not just, like, a K-pop thing, it's an industry thing, which is not to diminish that, like, editors should be finding writers who are Korean, who have, like, a background in this, who know about this. I don't know if there's, like, a lack of journalism students who are Korean, of Korean descent. I don't think that's true, but I think it's, like, an industry issue. Like, there's plenty of people covering it in Korea who are Korean. But usually, from my perspective, from talking to journalists in Korea, like, I have a lot of friends in Korea, thankfully, who are journalists, and a lot of them say, yeah, you don't want to be writing about K-pop because, it's not a prestigious beat. Like, why would you be talking about K-pop when you could be talking about Kim Jong-un? So, like, I mean, I would rather talk about K-pop instead of Kim Jong-un, but, like, it's not seen as prestigious. But then one friend told me that it was supposed to be, like, his in-between, like, prove that you can be a good enough reporter on K-pop and we'll push you to a different, beat. And then he was like, no, I love this. This is, like, there's so much happening here. It's so great. But, it's still, like, both Jeff and I are freelancers. There are, like, the industry sucks, like, really. Sorry, I'm really hating on the industry right now. But I think, like, until the industry, makes opportunities for people who, need help getting into the industry, whether it's, financial help or just, like, breaking in. Like, I am always so surprised when a young writer reaches out and it's like, how do I do this? And it seems so simple to me because I've been doing this for so long. And I realize, oh my gosh, like, this same person is competing for the exact same editors that I am because they're also a freelancer. And, like, the industry needs to, recognize that there are some freelancers who have never written an article before and they want to write and they have a great voice and you need to give them a chance versus people who have already been writing forever. So I think, it's a huge problem. I hope that editors recognize it's a problem. Like, I've like had conversations with my editors, like, don't you want to bring on some more diverse voices to talk about this thing that has a huge diverse audience and is not from like my cultural background? And they're just like, yeah, but you know what you're doing, you know it. And it's like, okay, but even if I'm like the best expert at this, even if I know everything in and out, which like I don't, because I'm not the world's biggest K-pop expert, I don't know who that is, but it's not me. Like, I don't know, maybe Jeff. I don't know. But like, you know, there's no one expert of anything. And so like we need to really kind of be like uplifting everyone. So like when I see, you know, anybody's articles, like I'm always sharing my friends' articles on Twitter. I'm sharing articles by people I've never heard of. I'm sharing articles by people whose voice, like opinions I disagree with, because like at the end of the day, we're all sharing, you know, these ideas, and each of these ideas, that's another idea that like, you know, you like set the slinky down the staircase and like you want it to go really fast. So I think it's a huge issue. I think editors are starting to realize it, but when an editor is just, you know, the bottom line is get content out quickly and well, they don't take the time to think, oh, who else can I hit up? I'll just email this person. I'll just email that person. You know, I regularly respond to requests for articles. Like, I don't think I'm the person to talk to. You should talk to this person. Like, not every journalist does that. I'm not sure that every journalist is even aware that that's a thing that other journalists are doing. Like, you know, because at the end of the day, we're making money on these things. Like, this is our livelihood. But like, there are just times when it's like, I don't think like, I don't know, we like, I think for me, it always goes back to like, we're all humans and we can raise each other up. And like, if you see a problem, you need to do what you can to like kind of uplift other people. And even if it feels like really small, like I used to think like, oh, I'm not an editor. And then the other day I was just talking to my friend and I was just like, you know, we have a blog. Why can't we pay people and, you know, give them the opportunity to say what, you know, maybe another editor won't. And so they can go to an editor and say, hey, let's go do that. Look at this thing I wrote. And, you know, even just getting a single like byline at a place that isn't like their own personal blog can help people. And like we're not like sitting there thinking, oh, this is gonna change people's careers forever. But like it's just like, you know, we can help other people edit a story, we can help people pitch a story. You know, I will say to people, we don't, you know, this pitch isn't good for us, but why don't you send it to this outlet? Why don't you pitch this thing? Or like, you know, this pitch isn't good for us right now. Why don't you come back? Like I think that there are so many voices out there that we're just not like able to hear through all the noise of the world. That's the TLDR from my really long "this industry sucks" rant.
Fair. Very fair. Jeff, from Esther Palomino, we have, good night, everyone. I am just starting my career as a journalist, and as some kind of happy coincidence, the media where I work allows me to write some news about K-pop. What would you recommend to someone who is beginning a path in music journalism? Thank you.
Yeah, I thought that you had some really amazing answers, by the way, earlier, Tamar, in that question. So thanks for saying that very eloquently. But yes, to continue on the conversation. You know, Esther, I think you know, I don't know what career, or I don't know what media you work at, or what place you work at, but you know, find that unique thing that, you know, you and your outlet and your platform and you as a writer can be known for. I think you know, I there's a difference between what is put out on Teen Vogue versus New York Magazine versus Billboard versus Rolling Stone, and it might not seem like there can be a bit of nuance, but I do think the best kind of writing and the best kind of writers do find a way to cater specifically to that audience and kind of find a way to make it unique, so that, you know, in the end, you know, if you end up writing about you know, if you are so lucky to be able to write about, you know, every BTS comeback, that your writing just doesn't feel the same every single time, or rather people can come to you to know that, oh, I'm going to get that perspective, I'm going to get that feeling and that vibe from her. And and just knowing that it's something that you can stand out for and be known for, and then you continue hopefully to raise your platform and your profile in that way too. I think just finding that voice, finding the thing that you can be special at and specific about, I think is so crucial. And yeah, I wish you lots of luck.
As a follow-up, oh, sorry, my bad. What were you saying?
I was just saying good luck. It's
Okay.
it's so exciting to start something new.
Yeah.
Following up that question for my own sake, how would you, because you're entering a field and a community with so many different people, how would you get your own art and your own work to stand out in that, pot of so many other works that are all about generally the same topic?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it's a lot of experimentation, right? Or rather, I would say it's a lot of experimentation. I remember quite literally, finding, experimenting with different hashtags online. Twitter was definitely a big community for me from the beginning. And I remember just even what I learned from Twitter, and how I could approach the way that I was putting out the content. Twitter played a really big part in that. And, just trying to see, okay, what's working, what's connecting with people, what's not connecting with people, whatever kind of platform you might want to use, whether that's Instagram, whether that is a WordPress, or whether it's whether it's TikTok, things like that. There's a lot of different avenues, just because I love Twitter and just because I love Instagram or whatever it might be, doesn't mean that that's the way everyone needs to put out their articles, and things like that. There's so many different avenues, and find what speaks most to you. I mean, I was just personally love Twitter, not so much these days, but trying to diversify it a bit, but just trying to see what feels good, and what's connecting, and what's not making me feel like what's making me feel like this is worth my time. And whether that is reaching out to Jasmine, if you have saying, I want to see myself on this website, this is the dream website, and trying to find a contact there, trying to follow a writer there, trying to follow an editor, find someone who works there. I definitely think also watching the people that you admire and esteem to be, end up in similar spaces. Why is my mom texting me that my Zoom interview came out really good? It's not over, Mom. We're still talking, okay? But she hung up. She's over. She's done with this. But sorry. Just following those people that because I've learned so much from people that I really looked up to, and certain, I'm so lucky to call certain writers who I quite literally, they helped me see what my writing could be and what it could look like. I'm so lucky to call those people friends, and be able to text them, just different questions I might have, or whatever it might be. It's just, it's really nice when you can kind of see that. So I would definitely say, surround yourself with what you want to become, what you want to see in the world. It's not going to happen unless you can kind of envision it yourself. So creating that kind of internal community, but also what was the second? Oh yeah, just find a lot of experimentation.
The last question for tonight is for Tamar. Tamar, what is your, from Mal E, what is your motivation behind writing a book about BTS?
Before I talk about my motivation, I'm just gonna be like, look, it's so shiny. I love it so much. But yeah, it's out on August 11th. It's called BTS Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Yes, I know it's not BTS Blood, Tears, and Sweat. It's because it's their song. I've heard this from a lot of people who don't know their song, and they're like, why isn't it BTS, BTS? And I'm just sitting there like, not have an answer for you, except that was not the title I put on my original outline for the book, and my editor thought it'd be better for the world. But no, I really like BTS is one of my favorite groups. I've been writing about BTS pretty much since like the early days. Like I started my career a little later, but I was actually studying in Korea at the same time as BTS, and even like I wasn't necessarily like I'm like the first person who can admit like I was very like they're on a bus wearing a lot of hip hoppy clothes and music, and like I'm way more of a ballad girl. Like I'm a huge ballad person. So until like we got to more of the ballad stuff, I wasn't like all in. But a few years ago, I was approached by an editor, and she was like, you know, I've read a lot of your stuff on BTS, and she's like, and I think I want to write a book with you. And it was like I'm like the biggest book nerd on the planet. I've been writing about BTS already. I was already a few years into my career at that point, and I was literally writing everything I wanted to write about BTS, like literally physically. I couldn't publish enough of it. And so she said, you know, if you have an idea for a book, write the book. And I was just like, wait, you're offering me to write a book about this thing I just want to write every day about? So I wrote a book and I worked with her on the book, and it's coming out on August 11th. And I'm really excited to share it with the world, and I hope the world likes it.
Yay. I'm so excited. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the release of it just so I can see you be excited on Twitter.
It's definitely like more like a lot of people are like, is it like old journalism? I'm like, no, it's really, I just used it as an opportunity to write everything I've ever wanted to write about BTS, but never using the word I or me. So like, I'm still like sitting there like, I hope nobody can read this and figure out who my bias is. Cause like, that's me being a super journalist. Like, I don't like when people know like what K-pop groups I like or anything. Like, I don't think that's really important for my career. But like, I was coming out of it, like I got the physical copy, and I was like, oh, there's a good picture of him. Like, that's good. These pictures are great. I'm really excited. It's really pretty inside. I like don't want to flip that much, but there's a lot of colors. There's a lot of really bright pictures. It kind of reminds me of like a teen magazine, which we had a lot of arguments about. And they were like, but they're a boy band. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of words. So it's okay if it looks like a teen magazine because the content is fitting to what the level I want it to be up to. But it's the same feel of like what a boy band should have, I guess, according to my design team. But I really hope people enjoy it. It has 3 different parts. The first part is like their history. So if you want, you can skip that. I wouldn't suggest it, but if you're a big fan, you can skip it because like you know it already. And then it's music analysis, and then like mini essays on different elements of their fandom and their career, and like why are they so popular, and everything is from like the American perspective because that's what I can offer the world. So I hope people enjoy it.
Yay. Jeff,
really I'm literally like shaking. Like, this is so exciting. It's coming out next month. I have a book, you guys.
Congrats. I'll be sure to order it. It's on pre-order, right?
You can get it at any bookseller. Support small booksellers.
Jeff, are there any big projects coming from you in the future?
Yeah, I think 2020 has been such a fascinating journey, right? But I, just trying to do new things. Hopefully I will have good news to share soon too, in terms of books, TV, things, all in the works and trying to make the magic happen now. But I think there'll be good news coming soon. But, for now, I'm just, trying to keep my mind right and keep bringing these exciting stories to the world. And I think, it's going to be a good year in the end, for sure.
Well, if there anything does come into fruition, please let us know. Yeah. We are very excited. All right, I think that is the end of our webinar for today. Thank you both for coming to join us. Thank you also, CJ and the Berkeley Global Partners for sponsoring our lovely show. Thank you also for the viewers who came and asked a bunch of questions and were able to watch the magic happen.
And thank you, Jasmine. It was amazing getting to meet you and getting to chat with you, and you were a great host.
Well, thank
yes, this is her first time, you guys. She was we were talking about it on email, and you were apologizing. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry that I didn't.
I was apologizing like every other email.
Oh no. for your time. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed. And I don't want to speak for tomorrow, but I'm available, and we're here for you guys, and especially students. We want to help. So yeah. So stay safe and wear your mask.
Yes.
Wear your masks.
Wear your mask, social distance as much as you can. Stay inside as much as you can. FaceTime your friends. Zoom your friends and have technical difficulties like everyone else. All right. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. We will see you next month. And until then, good night.